Yes, a very good evening and welcome back again. And this is the next episode of how to become an effective public speaker series. And last time we discussed about the kind of difficulties, the kind of problems you've been through, or the kind of problems uh, faced while you were trying to become a public speaker. And you also talked about the importance of storytelling in becoming a good speaker, and you also talked about the importance of body language, because this reflects your confidence, this reflects your knowledge as well. When a person speaks confidently, uh, this is half the battle, right? And if they are not at means they are not at all motivated, from within, they are not at all confident, uh, they can actually forget whatever they are going to talk to people or whatever they're going to say to people, right? So it's important to have good body language, positive body language. It's important to have storytelling as well, because uh, this is in stories are actually very riveting. They're inspiring, and they motivate people, and they can also help you put your message across. So it's important to
Right.
have a good command over telling stories. And you also talked about your experience while you were actually trying to become a good speaker. And now we are gonna move on to the next points, which are likely to have a good message for the people who are listening to it, and they'll definitely be getting benefited from it once they start putting everything into practice, right? So I just want you to say something about yourself, and you just recap the kind of the points which we discussed in the last session. And you can also have the question which I'm going to ask you right now, and you can just uh, start speaking on everything you've been asked so far. So my question is, how do you structure your speeches when you go to face the audience? You go to means and you go to address good gathering. So how do you address your speeches? Sorry, how do you structure your speeches so that they are very engaging, and they are going to be very much effective? Over to you.
Okay, very good evening, first of all. And for all my audience, this is just a short introduction. I am Robin Verma, and I am a lawyer by profession. And apart from this, I really love to have such conversations and to be interacted with new generations, the youngsters, and to know more about them. Now, moving to the topic that we had, especially in the previous video, we already talked a lot about all those important components and the aspects of what makes a good speaker. And we also talked about the role that the body language to play, especially in building up good communication skills, right? So these are, you can say, very natural factors that one who has just initiated his or her learning process into the same business, I think, to be very well about these components and always need to carry all these things together. So this is just, I think, could not be ignored from my from what I have experienced so far. Now, coming back to the question that you have asked, I mean, how I usually, you can say, structure my sentences, especially when I go to a large audience. I mean, this is a very interesting question, by the way, because I grappled, up with this question for over a period of time. I mean, what I can say is that I really struggled with this. I mean, at one point of time, and then I, with my own experiences, learned a lot of things. So, first of all, what I think is that your construction is not very important. What is important, especially when you hit such a platform where there are large number of audience to listen to you, is that your content that you have to throw to the people, your recognition, your personal appreciation, you that is something that you expect from the people, is solely based on this. I cannot deny that construction is something which has no role to play in this. But what I'm saying is this: until unless you have a good, strong, and a very comprehensible content, whatever it is pertaining to whatever subject that you have decided, even when you have a good constructions, it is something which is not likely to produce much results for you, because people are there with the precious time to listen to you, and you have nothing to give to them as a return, right? People are there to listen to your ideas rather than how you present those ideas. I mean, presentation of idea is something very important, but it becomes important only when you have something to deliver. A hollow mind, a hollow wire is something of something which I think doesn't produce much results, right? So language has to be followed up with some important strong content. So the first point a speaker must recognize and must give this due respect or a concern is that they should be all well prepared with the content. Now the next question could be, there is this content, whether to be retained or it's to be thrown right as it's someone who comes out naturally and starts speaking. Now this could be a question, because when you address a large audience and you have a content, so this content probably is something which is memorized. So many people find it really hard to throw and puke it out something which you have memorized, and moreover it goes inconsequential or something very which has no sequence at all, right? Now in this case, it's better you, or as a speaker, anyone who is having such chance, that the content should be all organized by the personal choice. Means the speaker must be very well familiar about the content. It means the speaker must know what he is going to deliver. Until the speaker doesn't know about it or knows about it, I think it is not going to produce much results. So my only response to this question is this: focus much on the content and then come to the construction, because constructions is only valuable only when you have a good content. Over to you.
Yes, so you mean that your speech has to be based on, situation. You cannot simply ignore the audience. You can not ignore, what they're expecting from you. If you have
Right.
just memorized your content, just you just go there, and just say everything that you memorized.
Right.
But this is not actually going to be successful, because you don't know the situation. You have just memorized the content, but
Right.
situation may be different from what you expected, right? So you have to be a bit flexible in terms of your delivery of your speech,
Right.
right? So if you're not flexible, if you cannot mold yourself according to the demand of the audience, then you are going to be a big failure as a speaker, right?
Right.
Okay, so my next question is, how important is it to know your audience and tailoring your speech accordingly, tailoring your message accordingly?
I mean, this is very natural that every time we have a different audience to address, right? So different audience with different expectations, so different system and organizations of thought process, right? So everything is new, everything is fresh. So people who come with this questions that what we can do in certain situation, there is no clear cut solution, to be very honest, because everything is a different and a new situation. If something could be done in this, is that your well preparedness on the part of your mind. So you should be very thoroughly aware of this, that every situation is a different. Now, the precondition of this, that your basic understanding about your delivery of speech or deliverance of any speech must be at least very strong and concrete. Because first of all, if you don't have this part very strong in you, you cannot hold a conversation with the audience, right? Because it is you who have to understand the audience, because understand audience is your responsibility, not vice versa. So you have to understand the audience, and to understand the audience, it is important that you should be very well, you can say expert in holding an indirect engagements or direct engagements with the audience, so that you could understand the kind of vibes they have in their minds, the kind of expectation they have from the speaker, and the overall thought process, the mindsets they are sitting, especially in the auditorium or in the hall, right? Until unless you know about it, it is going to be very difficult for any speaker to address, to actually even try to do something in their on their part in terms of the content, in terms of the construction of the sentences, or in terms of holding a or holding or establishing a connections with the audience. So this is something which is very very critical aspect of the communication. Rarely speakers even give weightage or throw weightage to this very part of the communication skills, because mostly people think still today that whatever they speak is something which is convincible, right? And they really don't care about whether it is being accepted by the audience or not. So you might have heard, or you might have gone through those important, some significant part of the speeches that ever took place, especially through many of the channels and the news channels, that one quality among good speakers which actually makes them a distinct public speaker is that right in the beginning of their speeches, especially before they hit the flow, they try to hold a kind of relationship with the audience.
Audience,
And
yes.
how do they do this? By only holding a direct connection with this, by throwing some indirect question to them in order to have an idea exactly what is running in their mind. So once you know the kind of idea or the kind of expectation or the kind of overall thought process running, I think you better be more in a very strong position thereafter. And then you, with your communication skills, with the expertise whatever you have arranged so far, by mobilizing a thought process, the content, whatever it is, you can go for marshalling everything that you have arranged for that. You can throw it in that manner. So this will be more appreciated thereafter, rather than you go and start just like with your flow, and you then expect that yes, something is going to good to happen with you, which rarely happens in this case. Over to you.
Yes, it's really important to know your audience because now whenever I address a good number of people, I make sure whether the people are interested in whatever I'm going to deliver, right? Suppose you're talking to somebody who is very much into cricket, and you're talking to them about astronomy, right?
Right.
It's quite difficult to relate, and you both will be on cross purposes, right? So it's really
Right.
important to know the audience. Next question, next question is what kind of mistakes new speakers are likely to make, and they often make, and how they can avoid making such mistakes.
Okay, I mean, this is very common these days, and I think this is very much a reflection from the new speakers which are emerging out recently. As we all know, those open platforms of speaking and addressing to a large audience, such as YouTube and several other channels, where people.
Yes, go on. There was some connection failure.
Okay, okay. So should I need to start right from the beginning of that questions, right? To
No,
respond to that question, right?
no, actually, you've spoken, and that is also already recorded. You can just move on. You can just continue.
Okay. So okay, so what I was trying to say is this, that your overall this I mean, I'm talking usually about all those new speakers, right?
Yeah,
Those
the
who are
kind of
emerging out
mistakes,
of the new
the
speakers.
kind of mistakes they are making, and how they can avoid those mistakes.
Absolutely. I mean, you and anyone who is into this business of speaking is very well aware of the fact that people today having a very less patience in them to listen to people. Moreover, they are real not inclined towards listening to people, rather than they are more hell-bent on speaking. So I mean, this is what is making them even more one-sided speaker. Okay, so unidirectional kind of conversation happens in most of the cases. I think this is something which I think is still, you know, something goes unnoticed, right? So, which I think new speakers must focus on. Second important point, which I think is very much, you know, uh, reflecting through their communication, is this: they are not more on the content, rather on the construction part, right? So they are very much on to the point how they can emphatically present themselves, rather than how they should present their content emphatically. So these two things are distinctly different, right? So large audience, they are not to listen to you, not to find you as a good speaker. They are there to listen what you have as an idea, as an opinion. So on this part, I think if they present, their idea, their content, or whatever they are, whatever they prepared, I think more emphatically, I think that could be even more, working in their cases. And I think this is very much rare in this. Okay. And third, which is very regular, I think they are very much into using most fanciful words. I mean, it's okay. I mean, this is just like a curiosity for every new speaker to use a different fanciful words. But after a certain time, when you grow a bit mature in this business, you find that to throw something forcefully always reflects your, artificial aspect. And a good speaker is someone who is a natural speaker. So even when you are interested in producing your overall image as someone who speaks more like an advanced speaker, I think needs to be very, very careful about the kind of vocab or the kind of sentence construction he is using. And if he is or she is very much okay with the correct placement of the vocab or the sentence construction, I think it's good. But it rarely happens because in the very process of using new advanced words, even without having a proper reason or a relevant situations where they could use it, they deliberately try to fit those things into that conversation and makes the entire conversation spoiled up. I mean, a good speaker or a person who has this business of speaking can easily identify it, or I think their score could be reduced thereafter. So these 3 points on which I think new speakers could work and could be little thoughtful about. Over to you.
Yes, yes, I'm reminded of somebody. I don't really remember who said this, but somebody said that we should be keeping our conversation so simple that even a simpleton can understand that, right?
Right.
So the message of your speech is to give something to the people, and if you're confusing them, you're not actually serving the purpose, right? And one more person now said, I think I don't really remember whether it was Dale Carnegie or Mark Twain, who the person was, and I don't really know. But he says that 50%, 60% of the talking has to be done by the person you're speaking to. So you have to
Yeah.
be a good listener if you want to be a good speaker. You should at least be giving it a thought to what the what the audience is asking you, right? And if you
Right.
cannot listen to them, you cannot become a good speaker. Next question,
Right.
and my next question is, how can you know people develop the this new skill of being authentic, and how can they keep themselves authentic? Because generally, we see that people are copying those who are superior to them, or they just, in order to become like them, they are walking in their first footsteps, and they lose their own identity, and as a result they cannot they fail to be what they are wanting to
Right.
be. So how can what kind of quality they should be developing so that they can become very unique, and they can become somebody people love to listen to?
Right. I mean, I would love to respond to this in this way that every process of learning, even if it is a process of learning a new language or a new business, I mean, for an entrepreneur who wants to establish new business or a person who's really willing to acquire a good hold over a new language, then everything has some tenets and which could not be, undermined right in the beginning. So you can call them basic, or you can say those rudimentary terms of that particular business that you are enrolling yourself into this, right? So these basic points must be well fitted to your consciousness, and you cannot separate your learning from these basic and the most cardinal points of your learning, right? So I'm trying to explain what are those important cardinals that actually makes a person a good speaker. Moreover, these are the basic instructions. Those who are trying to be a good speaker, or those who have enrolled themselves in this learning communications kind of programs, right? So first, which is according to me could be a cardinal, that that there is not at all a requirement for what to be acquiring the accent of native speaker. I mean, this is something which I think has gone unnoticed for several years. I don't know, but now recently people are coming out with this thought that why to lose our own identity in the name of learning other language? After all, you are learning it for the sake of your business, for the sake of your profession, for the sake of something else, but you are trying to use this language as a part of your profession, right? Because you are trying to establish your connection with someone who speaks this language. It doesn't mean that you have to just like play a role which is full of affectation, which is not you, right? So this idea of acquiring and this passion of acquiring, the accent of native speaking, I think is the biggest roadblock which hampers and hinders, but which you can call a, the biggest resistance in the learning process, which actually makes people less fluent in the communication skills,
Yes.
because the entire focus is on not the learning process but to acquire this very accent, which I think is very much scornful sometimes. People take a piss at those. For example, I had some instances where few of my friends always would imitate the accent of some American, speakers, and I had some American friends then. So whenever we would hold conversations together, so few of my friends would try to imitate their accent, and they are very much natural, and they really give credit to those natural speakers rather than to those who come out and flaunt their accent which they don't belong to, and which could easily be, you can say, understood and captured by the native speakers. So this is something which I think must be well understood by all the speakers who actually think that they should learn something, or they should be a good speaker in this, right? So this is I think the basic point which I think mostly speakers must follow and then initiate their learning process of communication skills. Over to you.
So instead of imitating people, we should be keeping it real so that we can maintain our authenticity. Right. That's very much
Absolutely,
important.
absolutely.
Otherwise, means in imitating people, we'll be losing our own identity and we'll be
Absolutely.
nobody then. Right. Okay. Next
Right.
question is what role does feedback plays in improving our communication skills? I mean, in trying to become a good speaker, does feedback play any role? And if it does, then how people can seek feedback, feedback and utilize it?
I mean, what I can say to actually, to respond to this question, feedback is more like a food to a hungry person, right? I mean, uh, I mean, what conversation you have had that you didn't get a feedback at the end of the conversation? So feedback is something which is really important. Otherwise, if you don't get feedback, you always think that you are something where you have failed on some part of your communication skills. You are not getting feedback in return out of a long conversation could only mean to a sensible person is that either your content was not comprehensible enough, or your overall communication was not very much comprehensible enough, or maybe it could not be understood very easily on the other part, right? So either of the way actually gives a feeling of failure to a spokesperson or to someone who is speaking, right? So feedback is very important, and therefore I could go and connect it to the holding of right content. A feedback is always possible, and is always possible in those cases where you have a good content, as I talked right in my first response to your first question, that how a good content could be really important to to elevate your overall stature as a communicator or as a public speaker, because your because the feedback is entirely based on what you speak, right? It's not just what you speak, but are you aware that whatever you have spoken was very well taken on the other side, or be absorbed by the other side? And if this thing is clear on your part, I think you are the most happiest, you can say, speaker, who actually has done everything so successfully. So feedback is the result, right, of what you have communicated so far with your counterpart. No feedback equal to absolutely wasting of time. Moreover, it puts you to some point of depressive state of mind where you even start questioning yourself and your overall communication skills, whether you are not comprehensible enough, or where you go blank, or whether what happens to you in your case when you are going to address a large audience, or whether you are comprehensible but just because of your thought process was so vague, so turbid, that it actually doesn't come out as a more something which could be held as a systematic conversation, and that led to those idea of vagueness among all those listeners to listen to you. So these are the cases, or these are the questions which generally emerge out, especially in the mind of the speaker, only when he or she doesn't get feedback at the end of the conversation. Over to you.
Yes, you mean that feedback shows us feedbacks show us mirror, and
Absolutely.
they always help us improving ourselves, because if we don't get the feedback, we don't actually focus on the lacunas which were there while we were producing something, we were doing
Right.
something, right? So it's important to get feedback if one wants to improve oneself, right? The next question is, how important is practice while a person is in his journey to become successful speaker, and how can one practice in the means in the right manner?
I mean, being a non-native speaker, what could be confidently said about it is that until you open up your mouth and utter some words which completely a foreign language to you, you cannot start having expectations from yourself that you are going to be a good speaker in sooner or later. So this is something which should be well understood and construed by all learners who have initiated their learning process in the same business. That your communication becomes more comprehensible, more laconic, only when you start uttering those words, because we are non-native speakers, right? And when you speak Hindi language, for example, when we speak Hindi language, our mouth muscles is structured in that way that we easily communicate Hindi language, right? And if we don't practice this English language, we are not going to give the muscles, you can say, practice, because
Yes,
our mouth is having some muscles, right? And which has to be familiarized with all those English words,
yes,
English vocabularies, and what you can say constructions. And until you practice this for a period of time, you cannot say that you are going to be good speaker, because the first or the precondition to be a good speaker is that to communicate. However, many people still, I think, I don't know who ever told them or gave this suggestion to them that start your learning process right from the grammar. I do understand the significant part that the grammar to play, especially in the communication, the writing. But of my experience, I say grammar is a very important part, undoubtedly. But as far as speaking is concerned, I mean, you need not to be bothered about your grammar part, especially in your initiation or in your beginning phase, because once you not get bothered about your grammar part and continue to speak, you actually get the rhythm. And once you get the rhythm, thereafter you can put your entire focus on the grammar part. But initially, if you start with the grammar part, right? Once you start with the grammar part, grammar is like an ocean, right? And when you start your journey with this very vast grammar part, you start submerging into this. And then you are completely drowned in that whenever you go and just confront people with this language, English or Spanish or whatever language you are speaking, your thought process is actually something which works like, which always keeps recognitions or demands or seeks recognitions or appreciations, or you can say acknowledgement from that all those learnings that you have acquired through the grammar section. So that makes your entire process so much intricate, so much naughty, that you really fail to communicate fluently. So the first process is to go and start speaking, and thereafter focus on the grammar part. Never ever undermine the part of grammar, but it should be put on the second phase, not in the first phase. So first get the rhythm and then take the grammar, be a part of your communication skill. Over to you.
Yes, we cannot neglect the importance of everyday practice. That's crucial. If
Right.
you don't practice on everyday basis, you cannot actually become a good public speaker because that's important. My next question is,
Right.
not many questions are left. One or two questions are left. The next question is, what advice would you like to offer to the people who are transitioning from being a good speaker to being a fantastic speaker?
I mean, this is a very difficult one because every experience is a different experience. But I think, I mean, what I can say, but I always put much emphasis on being a natural speaker. I mean, this very idea of being an influencer, don't you think is very much, cumbersome in its own way, that it puts you under pressure right from before you speak. So I really don't support this very idea as to how we could be more influential, but I would appreciate the idea as to how we could be more involved in the conversation. I mean, this is very important part of communication skills. So, for example, if you are addressing a large audience, and if you're not involved in whatever you are saying, what kind of a speaker you are, and what kind of speaker we are, that's what the question, someone may ask to oneself. So, involvement, and that too honest involvement with oneself, with every word that is spoken from the one side, must not be just spoken, but also to be enjoyed, must be enjoyed by the same person. And if it happens over a period of time, the speaker feels or the speaker starts having this kind of experiences, that people are getting influenced. I mean, indirectly or directly, you may connect to this very question as to how we could be well recognized speaker, right? I mean, this is something which you are trying to, throw to me by mincing your word, but exactly everyone wants to be an acknowledged speaker, right?
Yes.
So to be an acknowledged speaker, there has to be some originality left in speaking. There has to be some freshness left in the speaking. And that is only possible when a person is a better natural speaker. So natural speaker is only when you have your own thought process. So when you are reading something, when you are trying to acquire and marshaling thought about a certain topic, until unless you give your own personal touch to the entire learning and making it all a new overall, a kind of data for you and for other, you are not going to get much results out of it because everyone is doing this. I mean, every platform that you see today, people are just like imitating one other, right? You have
Yes.
learned something from this book and now you are puking it out on some platform. Other people
Mm-hmm.
are also doing the same thing. So until you conclude everything you learn in the form of data, in the form of content, until you make it anew by concluding in your own way exactly what you have understood, it is not something what you have understood from the point of other, because every mind is a political mind, and every political mind is working for their own personal benefits, and your benefit is not included in that, right? So
Yes.
therefore, to be a good hypnotic speaker, a charismatic speaker, it is very much kind of a precondition for this, that you should have your own fresh ideas. It should not be something very much stale, because if you speak something which is already spoken several times, that even when you do it more emphatically, I don't think people will recognize you in this very 21st century. Right? Over to you.
Yes, so simply put, what I believe is that if you are practicing every day, so in the day, means with the days passing, you may be a beginner right now, you may be a good speaker, or you may just be a fresh speaker. You've just started, you just made a fresh start. But with the passage of time, if you are practicing consistently, it's going to help you become a fantastic speaker. It is all about,
Right.
your means you're spending, investing a lot of time into developing
Right.
this skill, and then one
Right.
can become. There is no guarantee that it will take you this much time. It is all about your consistency, it is all about your efforts, it is all about your sticking to this particular idea of becoming a good speaker, right? So yes,
Right.
I think we have discussed all the points which a person must know about becoming a good speaker, and now it is up to the people how they are going to put everything we've discussed into practice, and how they are going to build their career as a public speaker,
Mm.
right? So we have got many more fantastic episodes to come. We'll be discussing many good topics on the means on this particular set, and we'll try every means we'll make every endeavor to give people whatever they're expecting from us, right? So
Right.
I'm taking a leave right now, and I'll be seeing you on Wednesday once again, right? Till then, take care.
Take care. Bye. Good night.
Good night.